And now we're joined by Vijay Prashad, the Executive Director of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. Vijay, thank you so much for joining the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So tensions with China have been really bad, to say the least. And I think a lot of people would blame this on Donald Trump. Certainly he has his share of blame in all of this. But the tensions really began with the Obama administration and this so-called pivot to Asia strategy. In an assessment of its own national defense strategy, the Pentagon this year called the Indo-Pacific region its highest priority. Why is the whole U.S. political establishment, both Republican and Democrat, obsessed with challenging and confronting China?
Well, it's a simple story, actually, because the United States economy has come to increasingly rely on the impact of its tech sector, particularly in telecommunications, in computer development, and so on. Over the last 5 years, the Chinese high-tech sector in areas like robotics, in areas like telecommunications and so on, has either matched or superseded the abilities of American firms to provide telecommunications, high-speed rail services, and so on. So this is a direct challenge, to the American economy. The advance of Chinese higher tech. It's not just the Chinese growth rate that's worrying. It's the growth in this particular sector that's deeply worrying to the United States. And I think it's a real worry. It's not a fake worry. Unfortunately, rather than have a serious debate and discussion about the fact that Chinese high tech has advanced beyond the United States, the United States has decided to have a debate in the gutter. Let's have a serious debate about this sector's vulnerability, rather than debate things like, where did the coronavirus come from and so on, which seem an utter distraction from what should be the real conversation.
You've described the U.S. war on China as a hybrid war, and I really like this term of hybrid war. I think it's something everyone should introduce into their vocabularies. But what is a hybrid war, and what does the U.S. hybrid war on China look like?
It's a good point about asking specifically about China. The term hybrid war basically means war without real shooting, without the need for massive aerial bombardment, invasion by troops, and so on. And a hybrid war it's not a new thing. It's been around for a long time. It includes attempted diplomatic isolation of countries, such as what the United States is doing, attempting to do with Venezuela, removing it from the Organization of American States, etc. It has ramifications in terms of communications warfare, where you say, well, look, the leader of this country is a dictator, or in the case of China, how the United States is saying, well, the Communist Party is a dictatorship, and look at what they don't talk about the Chinese government anymore. They just say the Communist Party of China. That's information warfare. That's another front in the hybrid war. Then, because of the role of the US dollar, the role of the United States Treasury Department over so many financial transactions, there's a way in which you can conduct a financial war against a country. You can cut it off from credit, prevent it from using the dollar effectively. And then eventually there's a trade war, which is a war on the commercial standpoint. So this range of attack against a country, from communications, the narrative of how to define the country, all the way out to a trade war. All of this must be seen coherently as the hybrid war. It's no sense in saying, oh, there's a trade war, there's a this, there's a that. No, there's a hybrid war on China, and these are the many fronts of that war.
China has really increased its role in the international community in recent years. I mean, we saw this a lot during the pandemic when China was sending doctors and medicine to countries like Italy and Zimbabwe. But also here to New York City, I mean, there was some controversy about that. Some people, they didn't want masks, I guess, if they were made in China. But, a lot of countries in the world look to China, especially developing countries, look to China as a hope, or at the very least an alternative to a world that's just been dominated by the United States for the last 30 years. Can you tell us more about China's role in international development and about some of these international development projects like the Belt and Road Initiative?
From the world financial crisis in 2007, 2008, it was a wake-up call for the Chinese government because they saw that their reliance on the American, the US market and on European markets was going to be catastrophic for China. And China then decided to do a range of things, to diversify the economy, including poverty alleviation schemes within the country, creating markets for goods within China, transfer payments to the Chinese population and so on. But linked to that was first One Belt, One Road, which is the first name of that project. And then it was called the Belt and Road Initiative. The idea was to build for Chinese economy, let's be clear about that, new relationships with countries on a trade, on a commercial standpoint, also infrastructural development, new relationships for China to trade with these countries. There was an older history of solidarity during the period of Chairman Mao, where China went out there and helped build a railroad in Tanzania, the Tanzam Railroad. There was assistance projects all across the world. But this was a very different kind of approach and an important approach. It was an approach saying we would like to partner with countries like Zambia, with Bolivia. We would like to partner with you so that we'd have a kind of mutual development, attempt to find a mutual understanding for economic growth. China has been giving zero interest loans to highly indebted countries. 85% of those loans have been forgiven. It's been a very interesting approach by the Chinese government. And I should say that it's a struggle. It's not that they have the perfect policy and they produce it. This is a struggle because China has to learn from what they're doing. The other countries that are partnering up, making deals with China have to learn. How do you deal with debt? When you take on debt for a project, you're building a port, the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. You're taking on debt from China. What does that mean to the Sri Lankan government? China is also reflecting on this. What does it mean to build something with debt financing? Or should there just be grants? So what I would say is that this is a process. You learn by doing. I think people are too quick to make criticisms about, some of these elements. One must be critical because you need to learn by doing. And I don't see anybody, as more critical sometimes than the forums that have been created for this, like the Africa-Asian Forum, where there's a lot of criticism about the projects, as there should be, because we need to learn to improve what development means when a richer place, in this case China, is cutting deals with a place like Bolivia and so on. Bolivia had a satellite, the Qatari satellite go up. It's a stationary satellite. It was launched by the Chinese. The Bolivians, paid for the satellite with Chinese money as well. This has been so important for Bolivia's telecommunications. But now the question is, what are the kinds of ramifications of these deals and projects? And I think that's being looked at and studied very carefully.
Newsweek just released an investigation claiming they've found 600 groups in the U.S. with ties to the Communist Party of China who intend to influence the election. It seems like the whole hacking and interference narrative is going to be a regular feature in U.S. elections going forward. One group that's been particularly critical of China, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, said about these allegations that they are cross-platform inauthentic activity conducted by Chinese-speaking actors and broadly in alignment with the People's Republic of China. What do you make of this?
I mean, what does one make of a fantasy? Look, in the last election, the one trying to change or influence the election was Russia. Now it's China. I mean, there's often very little evidence for these statements. I read the Newsweek article. What is one expected to say? If I wrote an article like that with such poor sourcing, my editor would say, look, you can't put this down. It's embarrassing. I found it an embarrassing article, if I'm frank with you. So you're asking me, what do you think of this? How is China trying to influence this election? Because frankly, between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, the policy framework vis-a-vis China seems minimally different. Do you know any U.S. high-tech firm, name one U.S. high-tech firm that has come out publicly and said they don't like this hybrid war on China? Not one firm. I mean, I don't know what you think. In my reporting, I have not seen exactly, not one firm. If not one US high-tech firm has come out and said, we don't want this trade war, we don't want this hybrid war in China, you know that the two political parties on this issue are totally united. So just think logically, if the Chinese say that whether Biden or Trump win the election, the general policy orientation vis-a-vis China is not going to alter, why should they try to influence the election? Who are they trying to elect? The Green Party candidate? I mean, is that what's happening? Is the Chinese government is trying to get Howie Hawkins into the White House? Is that exactly what's happening? Or are they trying to get Gloria La Riva into the White House? Is that what's happening? Is that China has backed Gloria? Is that really what Newsweek is saying? So I really don't get it. It just seems to me very sloppy reporting. It's a scandal that our profession allows this kind of thing to go. This seems like dirty tricks from somebody's bag of tricks that has been released to a reporter. That's all. They are within their rights to release some nasty dossier to a reporter. But this is where you have to have some integrity in the editorial team. What is the editor doing? Did they read the article? Did they ask for the sources? It's not my job to say what I think of that article, honestly. But I would like to ask the editor, do you stand by this? And will you stand by this in 10 years?